Hello everyone, my name is Kayleigh Frost. I'm the Head of Clinical Support at Health Assured, and I'm joined today by Saj, our wellbeing counsellor here at Health Assured, and we're going to be talking about self-esteem. So thanks for joining me this morning, Saj. I really, really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm good. Fantastic. Yeah, how are you?
Absolutely marvellous. Thank you very much. Thanks for asking. Okay, bro, well, I guess just start, Saj, by telling me, how have you ended up here as a counsellor? First of all, so just tell me why counselling?
Well, I used to work in a call centre for many years, and I was thinking, you know what, this is a bit rubbish actually, I can do better than this. I bumped into someone, and I go, what do you do? And he goes, I'm a counsellor. I thought you meant a political counsellor. I go, I don't trust them a lot. He goes, no, for mental health. And I thought, that seems interesting. So I went to a course, went to level 2, level 3, and before you know it, I became a counsellor.
Here you are.
Yeah.
So how long have you been a counsellor now?
About 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. Brilliant. And I mean, you work with so many different types of clients that I know of just from being at Health Assured. And I guess, you know, in terms of own like private practice clients and things like that, you've seen probably everything. Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty with counselling. All ages, all backgrounds, all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
You know, happy because, well, I want to say happy, but, you know, there are a lot of clients who, you know, they come with issues, but it's an opportunity for us to kind of be there with them and support them and empower them, really.
Absolutely. And so I guess one of the biggest things that you do see, which is the reason why we're here today, is about self-esteem.
Yeah.
And probably quite low self-esteem. And many, I guess it's not really the other way around, but you get people speak to you. So in terms of low self-esteem and self-esteem itself, what is it? Tell me what it is, Saj, because I don't know.
Yeah. And I think in every call or with every client, self-esteem to some extent is in the discussion. So self-esteem is your understanding of yourself, how you value yourself, how you see yourself, what's your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you have a good relationship with yourself, you're going to see yourself in good light, and then you're going to be kind of successful in what we do.
Yeah.
And I think with self-esteem as well is, one is what we call the real self, you know, your self-image, who you are, okay? And then you've got the ideal self, who you want to be, you know, who you visualize, that's what I want to be. But when there's
Beyonce.
Well, I always thought David Beckham when I was young, but, you know, when there's that mismatch and there's a gap between that real self and that ideal self, that's when you can stop. The way you value yourself can be effective in a negative way, and that's where self-esteem comes in, and that's where it can be affected.
So when you put it like that, I would probably think that most people have a different real self and is it ideal self is what you said. There is always going to be two separate people.
Yeah.
Is it do you ever see it where it's the same, your real self and your ideal self, that they're the same?
I think sometimes you can have where you have that real self, but then you're realistic. You're kind of, you know what you want to achieve and you work towards it. And when your self-esteem is in a good place, you know, the way you treat yourself and the way you try to achieve your goals is differently to when you have low self-esteem. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's where I think low self-esteem then becomes an issue.
So when we talk about this relationship with yourself and that being kind of what self-esteem is, what does a relationship with yourself look like?
Yeah. I mean, when you have a relationship, is how you see yourself in terms of how you talk to yourself. So positive self-talk or negative self-talk.
Like even in your head, it doesn't have to be in the mirror.
That's it. And when it comes to self-esteem as well, in terms of, you know, you can blame yourself when anything goes wrong. Well, it's because of me, okay? Or, you know, you're at work and, you know, there's too much, but you can't say no because, again, what people are going to think, okay? And that relationship is about how you think of others, where you try to kind of please people, where you try to do everything perfectly so people like you. So if that relationship with yourself is negative, then what happens is that you start to feel low, you start to dislike yourself, you start to withdraw, you start to feel anxious, you don't think you're good enough, you don't think you fit in society, and then you can start feeling kind of down. That's where mental health then starts being affected. But if your relationship with yourself is good, then you focus on things in your control, you be kind to yourself, you don't put pressure on yourself, you basically can say no, because then you know it's okay to, you know, to get things wrong, it's okay to make mistakes. So then that relationship develops, okay, and then if that self-esteem is healthy, then you can be assertive. If that self-esteem is healthy, then you can have a healthy relationship, you can have a successful job, you can learn how to say no and manage stress, and you can achieve goals, set goals and work towards them. But when your self-esteem is low, then those things become difficult.
With these, what higher self-esteem looks like, it sounds like, if you've struggled with low self-esteem for a number of years, probably all your life, I'm sure there's lots and lots of people out there that have struggled all their life, it would take an enormous amount of self-discipline to start flipping that, and becoming and having higher self-esteem. Like, it would take a lot of control and a lot of, really like self-awareness. You're being really mindful and aware and conscious of what you're doing and making changes. Like, that must be really hard.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think when it comes to self-esteem, it's a journey. It's a development. You don't because you can be very confident in what you do, because confidence is your ability to do things. Yeah. Your ability to kind of do this thing, what we're doing now. Yeah. Your ability to talk in front of an audience, or in football, if you have to score a free kick, do I have the confidence to do that, etc. Yeah. So you could be confident, but then at the same time, you could have low self-esteem. You think, well, actually, I'm a bit rubbish. Actually, there's something wrong with me. I think I don't fit in. So I think for that to develop, it's about then saying to yourself, is about different factors then have to kick in for you to develop it. So, for example, with myself, I'm not Superman. You know what I mean?
You're not?
We do a lot of different things. Okay, so confidence can be up and down. But I think for me, self-esteem hasn't really been in a negative way, because what I do is I try to focus on the solution. I try to be kind to myself. I try to say it's okay to get things wrong. I try to be realistic. I try to take care of myself. I try to release my stress and anxiety. I try to kind of work towards goals. Okay. And when you do some of these things gradually and slowly, then you kind of realize that, then you give yourself credit. Yeah. Then you give yourself, because then you remind yourself of your strengths. You remind yourself of your achievements. You remind yourself of what you like about yourself. And then you think it's okay if people don't like me. I'll survive. Okay. It's okay if I get things wrong. But that takes time. That takes experience as well.
So do you, is that how you've started, kind of maybe personally changing your way of thinking? So I'm guessing you haven't always thought in that way. That
not at all.
Those different, the positive side of things. I'm guessing that's not how you've always felt. I think
when I became a counsellor, things became different, because then you start to see things in a different light as well. Yeah. Because for me, I never came across the concept of focus on things in your control. Mm-hmm. It seems so basic, doesn't it? Yeah. But it's massive. And with every client that we speak to, because soon as you start to focus on things you can't do anything about, that's where you become anxious. Yeah. That's where confidence becomes effective, and that's where your self-esteem. So I've kind of learned over the years is, one is two or three main things really. One is to focus on things in my control. Yeah. And two is take care of myself. And then that just sounds, again, dead basic. But then once you go into self-care, then you realize that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is important for you to survive. Self-care is important for you to function. Self-care is a massive way of maintaining that high self-esteem. So that way you're taking care of yourself, you're walking, you're exercising, you're eating, you're sleeping.
I mean, they sound like basic needs, but I guess people don't always have the, good sleep, good eating habits, good, activity. Yeah.
And self-esteem, to achieve it, you don't have to be Superman. It's not, it's things that anyone and everyone can achieve. It's just about having that right mindset. Yeah. It's about trying to be kind to yourself. Yeah. It's about saying that you deserve to be treated in a happy, healthy way. Yeah. You don't have to get approval of other people, and you shouldn't tolerate any kind of behavior that you feel makes you feel uncomfortable. Okay. Because that's where fears kick in. And then, the question is, in terms of why do people have low self-esteem? I'm talking a lot here. I'm going to bring you into this.
No.
What is your understanding then in terms of why people might have a low self-esteem.
So, I mean, you've already kind of touched on it and you've already clarified for me that, so I think I was always getting confidence and self-esteem. And I've made a note here, and I think more for me to go away, take away, and like, high confidence, like lots of confidence isn't high self-esteem. And they are two very separate things. And I'm thinking a lot maybe about myself. You know me, we've worked together for a long time. I'm an incredibly confident person. I bounce about the office and, yes, you see me with my serious face quite a lot. But,
Quite a lot, yeah.
I have bags of confidence really, but self-esteem might not always be there. And I think that links in with things like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think self-esteem and imposter syndrome are quite similar or might feed into one another. Would you agree?
Yeah, because I think with imposter syndrome and also with kind of people pleasing, it's where you don't give yourself any value. You think that you're a fake, you think you're a fraud, you think that you just somehow wing it, and you think that, whatever you've done is not because of you, it's because of somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. And same with people pleasing, you feel that to be accepted, to fit in, to be loved, to get that, love, you have to basically please other people. Yeah. And if you don't please other people, then no one will want you, no one will want to keep you, then you won't be needed, okay?
Yeah.
So then you look at where is this coming from? Okay, and a lot of it is to do with, I think, upbringing.
Right.
A lot of it.
This is what I was going to go into. Like, what do you think the root causes are?
Yeah, I think that there can be quite a few. So upbringing is massive.
Yeah.
So, in terms of how parents kind of talk to you, if parents are very strict, if parents are kind of very critical, if parents kind of name and shame you, or even when they praise you excessively, because then you think that my worth, my love is only based on my achievement. So if I get an A star, yeah, you can have a new PS4. But if you get a D minus or whatever, then not your corner. Okay, so then that kind of gives you that for me to be accepted, for me to be loved, I need to achieve. So then what happens then? You spend a lot of time in your life trying to, aim for that perfectionism. Then you fear of getting things wrong. Then you fear of making mistakes. Then you fear if you're not successful. And I think all these things are important. But other factors as well is in terms of relationships, if they break down or bereavement, when you go into grief, that can affect your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Sometimes your body image, how you look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
That when we talked about self-image, when you don't like what you see, that can have, self-esteem. But also discrimination, racism, you talked about myself. I mean, I've experienced many incidents of racism, and that can have massive. So that can have, an impact on confidence, because then you think that, I don't think I'm able to do safe. But then you think, hang on, why are people discriminating against me? Why are they treating me in this way? And that can affect your self-worth, that can affect your self-belief, your self-love. And then you can get into a shell, and then that can make you anxious, that can make you feel low. You can even turn into kind of, feeling, like self-harming or suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think, with self-esteem, there are many, many reasons why it may occur.
Oh, gosh. I feel like I'm in a counselling session. All the things that you're saying.
Once I start talking, I can't stop you.
No, but I feel like, things like really ringing true. And I think that people listening to this, I mean, pretty much everyone that I know in life will connect with some of the things that you're saying. And I bet like when you talk to clients, and you speak to loads of clients and you help so many people, by the way, shout out to you, Saj. What you do is exceptional. But you must see this on like every other call at least, or some elements of this, people pleasing, low self-worth, low self-esteem, imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, because they all kind of fall under the same umbrella, don't they? Where people don't think much of themselves, but that's come from other, whether it's trauma or relationship issues, like you say, or upbringing, like there's socio-economic factors that might feed into that as well. But it almost feels like at least 1 in 2 people will have some elements of this. It almost feels like what's the word? Like an epidemic, like this is just, but it feels like so normalized.
No, it is. And I think when we speak to people, when we speak to clients, it's anxiety is massive. Work related stress is massive. But self-esteem, because, when self-esteem, when you don't address it, when you don't recognize the signs.
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes people might be living their life suffering from low self-esteem. So what happens then? Then, it can affect you in relationships. For example, you forget how to set boundaries. You kind of then, kind of tolerate bad behavior. Because then there's that, fear of loneliness, fear of isolation, fear of feeling.
If I don't grasp, like get hold of this now, like it will disappear from me and I'll never get it again.
Yeah, because sometimes we think, why are people in an abusive relationship? Why don't they just go away?
Yeah.
But then they think that, that at least there's someone here who loves me. And if he's not there or she's not there, then I've got no one. So they'll tolerate bad behavior. They'll tolerate abuse because they feel that, if I'm not in this relationship, then who's going to love me? Okay, that's where that self-esteem and self-worth comes in. So I think, that's kind of massive. But also, work-related stress. When you look at work, most people work, and when you work, what happens? You either the stress can get on top of you, and what happens is one sign of low self-esteem is when you're not assertive, where you can't say no.
Yeah.
Right, Sad, you want to do overtime? You've done it for the past 15 days. You want to do it tomorrow? Even though you don't want to.
You took the words right out of my mouth for later on. That's the office.
Even though you don't want to.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't say no because then you think, it goes back to people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because you think that your worth is people like me here. If I say no, they might think, I think we need to get rid of him. So they start then having that self-doubt. Yeah. And then, then that has an impact on how they feel. Because on the outside, when I speak to a lot of clients, they say, on the outside, everyone thinks, he's very confident, she's very confident. But they don't know what I'm going through inside, because the confidence on the outside, on the inside is where there's self-doubt. Inside there's anger. Inside they're feeling anxious, they're feeling low, they're feeling depressed, they're feeling, all these things. Why? Because that conflict we talked about at the starting, that real self and the ideal self is massive. And also the things that they want to achieve is the low self-esteem is kind of holding them back. And then what happens? Then if it's not addressed with, it can turn into worry, that can turn into anxiety, that can turn into them catastrophizing, mind reading, and then that can turn into low mood. That can turn into depression. That can turn into many other things.
It's a snowball, isn't it? And that's something that I wanted to touch on. You mentioned, when you gave the example of, saying no to overtime, oh my God, maybe they'll fire me.
Yeah.
People will think that.
Yeah.
But then do you think if this, I guess if there's other factors exacerbating those feelings, could lead into something really severe, like paranoia?
Yeah.
And really, really, more complex conditions. And I was thinking about this, in terms of body image, like what people think of themselves. Could then that go into, again, something more severe, like dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, or perhaps, an eating disorder or addiction as well, to get rid of some of those feelings. Like something, self-esteem will just become this monster that it can manifest itself into.
I think it starts with you not liking yourself, you criticizing yourself, you blaming yourself, you think you're not good enough due to various reasons. Then that increases to a level where it turns into low self-esteem. But then one of the symptoms of low self-esteem is a symptom of anxiety, is a symptom of depression, and then is also a symptom of eating disorders. It's a symptom of body dysmorphia, and also then, if that self-esteem reduces so much, then you start feeling helpless, you start feeling hopeless, and then you have no motivation to do things. You basically don't seek any pleasure in doing things. And then that can then, that's why sometimes people might turn to self-harm, because they feel that, I'm not worthy. Okay. So it can start with something, everyday thing that we think is just minor, but then if it's not addressed, if you are not then using coping methods, if you then don't focus on self-care, then what can happen is it can turn into a mental health disorder, and that can have many other symptoms. So
say someone, let's get practical there, because I feel like we got quite really deep then, which is fabulous, but we want to know what to do next, practical steps. So the hypothetical situation, which I'm sure you get at least once a day on the helpline, I'm feeling a bit crap about myself, basically, and I'm sure you get those words exactly. It's time to take some action here? What is, like a 3-step plan, or, what's the next steps for that person?
Yeah. I mean, for everyone, it can be different things. But one thing that I always say is that it's about trying to focus on things in your control.
Yeah.
That's always a starting point. And what does that mean? That can be, self-compassion. So being kind to yourself. So, saying positive affirmations. I am, I will, I can. Positive mantras to yourself regularly.
Give me an example of one, because I'd feel silly.
Yeah,
oh,
I am
right,
kind. I am caring. I've got beautiful hair. I'm hardworking. I'm going to focus on things in my control, etc., etc. I will.
Making
I
next
have.
for later.
Yeah, I shall. Because if you say these things regularly, then what does that do? Then that increases that self-esteem, that self-love, and just making a list every day of little things like your strength, your achievement, what you like about yourself, the positive things that you've got in your life.
Yeah.
Okay, because what happens sometimes is we focus on the negative. We focus on what we're not good at. But as soon as you start to remind yourself of your qualities, of your strengths, of your characteristics, of like the top 10 things you like about yourself. And once you get to 10, once you get to 10, you don't have to stop. Okay, but it's interesting you said 10, because when I ask this question almost every day, name me some of your strengths, okay? And the typical response is, I don't have any strengths. I don't have any. Okay. So I said, well, just name me one. Okay. And then they name me one. I go, are you kind? Yeah. Are you caring? Yeah. Are you hardworking? Are you committed? Are you a good listener? Are you organized? We've got to 15 and they haven't stopped. So that just tells you that we all have strengths. We all have achievements. We all have things that we're really good at. But we don't focus on them. We forgot about them. We focus on what we're not good at. We focus on what the negatives are. Yeah. So the first thing is reminding yourself of your strengths and achievements. Yeah. Is positive affirmations. Yeah. Okay. Focus on the positive things in your life. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then it's also about making sure that you're working towards goals. What do I want to do? Because it's about not focusing on what the problem is, focusing on what the solution is. We've all got problems. We've all got things that we don't like, but what can I do about it? Because as soon as you then focus on what you can do, not on what you can't, then what that does is it kind of thinks, well, actually, yeah, you're right. If I'm struggling at work, I could do something about it. Yeah. If the relationship there's an issue, I can focus on communication. Yeah. If I'm struggling with X, Y, Z, there's something that I can do about it. So I think focusing on the solution is kind of massive. Okay. And also the other big thing is turning your limitations into strengths. Okay. Because, who doesn't have limitations? I mean, I remember, when I was at school or college or uni, I always kind of, I kind of used to always talk about my negative points. And then I'm thinking, what am I doing, man? No one wants to be my friend if I'm talking about, I got this, I got that. So it's about kind of turning that limitation into a strength. Yeah. Okay. So if you're nervous, so if you can't focus, if you're anxious, if you lack self-care, if you lack self-hygiene, if you kind of are not good at interviews, if you don't know how to communicate with your partner, if these are limitations, it doesn't take rocket science to kind of turn that into a strength, and you can do it. And as soon as you start turning those limitations into strengths, you'll start what? You start feeling good about yourself. Yeah. Okay. And once you start feeling good about yourself, then you start achieving. And once you start achieving, that self-esteem, that confidence goes to the roof.
So I've written so many notes. I'm literally going to be walking. I am strong. I'm going to do positive affirmations for the rest of the day. I got really carried away with that. I was like, literally, that is, it just seems so simple, doesn't it? Realistically, the ways to move forward are incredibly straightforward and simple.
Yeah.
I think, if anyone's listening and perhaps it's manifested it a bit too much, and maybe it's not little niggly things anymore. Maybe it is starting to manifest into something a bit more serious. And what would you advise? Where would you get them to turn to next? What would you get someone to do? Like, what would be the next couple of steps they would need to take?
No, that's fine. And I think first of all is some of the points that we've talked about here. I think it's about making sure that you focus on your self-care. Yeah. Okay. If you're kind to yourself, you're taking care of personal hygiene. You're walking. You're exercising. You're journaling. You're speaking to friends and family. Yeah. You're setting goals. You're doing what you can. but even then you might be kind of struggling. Okay, then sometimes getting professional help. Because sometimes we have this stigma that I'm not crazy, I'm not mad, there's nothing wrong with me, I don't want to see you shrink. But it's like it's saying that your physical health is important, but your mental health is just as important, because your physical health has an impact on your mental health, and your mental health has an impact on your physical health. So just like if you got a headache or you got a chest ache, you've cut your leg, what would you do? You're not going to say, hey, I'm the man, I'm not going to go anywhere, I'm not going to see your doctor, I'll just I'll sort it out. No, you're going to see a doctor, you're going to go to hospital. In the same way, we shouldn't feel embarrassed, we shouldn't feel anything wrong about saying, what, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling down, if I don't like myself, if I'm struggling with my self-esteem, if I'm people-pleasing, if it's affecting me on my day-to-day life, let me speak to my doctor, who can refer me to a counsellor, let me speak to a local counsellor, let me speak to Health Assured.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then
hopefully they'll come through to you, and you'll give them this empowering talk.
So then that way, they'll get support. Because with Health Assured on the EAP, you don't need to have counselling sessions straight away. It's emotional support where you can speak to a counsellor 24/7. And I think what I've noticed is, you see, with counselling as well, because it's not free all the time, what happens, people can't afford it. And because people can't afford it, they think, right, food or sort my mental health out. So then they'll choose that option. So with an EAP, your employer pays for it, so you can use that support 24/7. You can talk about it, you can get coping methods, and then if you feel you need to, you can get, counselling sessions.
Of course. We're not here to plug this, but, this is just a lifeline, isn't it? Ultimately, it is a lifeline for so many people. And whether it's with Health Assured or not, being able to have that instant access, I think, is vital. It is so difficult if someone is along, on that journey with their mental health, and perhaps it is quite, severe. There isn't that primary care available that there once was for varying factors. We're coming out of a pandemic, at the end of the day. So utilising those types of helpline support in general, like I said, it doesn't have to be Health Assured or an EAP. There's plenty of other 24/7 helplines or helplines out there to help people in the moment, give some guidance on next steps. But I think GP, always a good shout, like you say. Get some kind of diagnosis if it has gone further along and manifested into something else.
And there's a lot of things online now as well. You can
loads of things, aren't there?
Yeah, you can go to websites. There's apps. And then there's 24/7, and then even crisis lines as well. So if you feel that you need urgent need, there's quite a lot there. And I think the important thing now is to say is that, recognize the signs.
Yes.
Recognize the signs. So am I anxious? Am I struggling to eat? Am I struggling to sleep? Am I worrying? Am I overthinking? Can I not struggle to focus or concentrate? Am I putting myself down? Am I withdrawing myself? Okay, so these might not all be signs of self-esteem, but mental health in general. Yeah. Because what happens then is, if it starts to affect you on a day-to-day, so you're struggling at work, it's affecting your relationship, it's affecting your decision-making, it's, you can't sleep, or you think you don't want to be here, then then right, I need to take this seriously, and then
Absolutely.
The best thing you can do then is speak to a professional. Because if you speak to a professional, because sometimes when you speak to your friend, they say, "Oh, give me a hug,"
or they want to go for a pint.
They want to take the pain away from you.
Yes,
but then that doesn't help. That's like just putting a plaster on you. What you need is you to talk about it in confidentiality, and then you need to kind of address the issue, and then you need to look at what's going to help me here. What's the underlying issue here? Because sometimes it takes time to tell someone that you've been struggling with something for many, many years, or something's happened to you, but because you feel guilt or shame or whatever it might be. So with speaking to a professional, you've got that confidentiality, you've got that safe platform, and then that way it could change your life.
My goodness, I feel like that is a really organic way to start. Very dramatic. I love it. Saj, you've been a gem. You are Superman, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So don't tell
yourself. Should have bought my
you're
shirt,
not.
yeah.
I know you should. I think, before I say goodbye, is there anything else you think we haven't touched on? Anything else you think we need to cover? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here with self-esteem. Yeah. I've learned bits and pieces. I've also got lots of things to take away from myself. You thought I was going to write notes to question you, but here, just tell myself I am strong. No, you've been fantastic. Like I said, is there anything that else you want to cover at all?
Yeah, I think when it comes to self-esteem, I mean, there's a lot, but I think in terms of basics is kind of like we've kind of what we talked about today, but in summary is to say, recognize the signs. It's
Yeah.
about focus on things in your control.
Yeah.
It's about be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
It's about focus on your self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's about work towards goals. And it's about kind of recognizing your own value, that your value is not based on other people.
Yeah.
And also recognize that, no one should allow you to treat you in a way that makes you feel unsafe or uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a relationship should be a healthy and happy one. And it shouldn't be an abusive one. Okay. And if you bear these things in mind, then hopefully you'll have good mental health and good self-esteem as well.
Mic drop. Perfect. Thanks so much, Saj. I think incredibly helpful, incredibly useful information there.
No problem.
You've been a star.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. I think we should do this more often.
Thanks, Saj.
Thank you. Cheers.